are welcome to Raleigh's District D Council Candidate Forum. A few housekeeping notes for all of us today. This forum is streaming live on RaleighNC.gov, the public access channel, which is RTN channel 11. And there are 5 potential appointees that you see here on your screen, selected by the City of Raleigh to participate in this virtual event. But first, I want to go over a couple of ground rules. First and foremost, the panelists will field 5 questions each, 5. They'll have 3 minutes each to respond to those 5 questions. So that's about 15 minutes per subject. And then I'm here to help them stay on time and to keep the discussion rolling so that everyone has a chance to respond. Finally, as we wrap up the forum, each of the potential candidates here will have 30 seconds to make some closing comments about themselves, but that's at the end of the program. An important note, we should definitely be encouraged and motivated by the fact that Raleigh's residents are definitely engaged and eager. The City of Raleigh received nearly 200 questions for this virtual candidate forum. I'm Tamara Gibbs, your moderator, but most importantly, let's introduce you to the potential candidates, the potential appointees here. They have 1 minute or less to tell you a little bit about themselves. And so we're gonna go in alphabetical order to start off here. So Carmen Wimberly Coffin, welcome Carmen. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Carmen Coffin. I was born here in Raleigh. I am a 60-year native. I've been active in the community literally since I was a child. My father had a drugstore here. My mother was an educator, and I would follow both of them around. I graduated from Broughton High School and attended NC State and worked with the North Carolina General Assembly, writing the journal for the House of Representatives. Have been involved in PTA since from 2000 to 2018 and various other events. I'm excited to be considered to perhaps be one of the first Black female on the City Council, and I'm happy to be here and answer any questions that are given to me today. Thank you.
Right on time, Carmen. Thank you. And so up next, Stormy Denise Ford. Stormy, are you able to hear us?
Sorry, I think I'm still on mute. I apologize. Can you hear me now?
No worries.
Okay, sorry about that. My name is Stormy Ford. Like Carmen, I'm a native of Raleigh, North Carolina as well. I also attended Broughton High School. I attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I got a master's degree there as well as a bachelor's degree there. And then I went to North Carolina Central University School of Law. I've come back into the area and been very active in a number of different organizations and community events. I currently serve on the board of the Lightner Y Achievers. I'm a member of the North Carolina Commission on Racial Equity Disparities. I serve on the North Carolina Science and Friends Advisory Board for the Science Museum. I'm also a advisory board member for Preparing to Soar. And I've had the opportunity to participate with a number of community organizations. I'm a member of the Raleigh-Wake Citizens Association, as well as the Wake County Voter Education Coalition. And I volunteered for the Rex Open, Boogaloo, and a number of other events throughout the city. I'm a volunteer almost full time, it seems like. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Stormy. And a warm welcome to Jane Lindsay Harrison. Jane.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being with us today. My name is Jane. I am an experienced economic and community development leader. I really have a versatile background in community-based natural resource management, economic development, data-driven decision-making, participatory research, and education. Social and environmental justice are the core of my life values and work. I have a 20-year track record of effective community organizing and leadership. In my roles at NC State University, where I work to ensure a sustainable seafood supply, protect our coast's natural resources, and teach and empower the next generation of community leaders. In my career with Sea Grant, a program of NOAA, I see firsthand the connections between economic and social prosperity and care for our environment. I'm also on the faculty in the College of Natural Resources at NC State.
All right, thank you, Jane, so much. And greetings, Todd Kennedy joins us.
Hello, I want to thank council and my fellow finalists for this opportunity. As a resident of Raleigh for over 20 years, I've developed a deep commitment for the city and its people. I've watched Raleigh grow, and I want to work with the current council to build on the city's progress and address its challenges. I'm a bridge builder. I strive to listen and hear, and I'm driven by data and compassion. I have a son who attends public school, and my wife is a social worker. My education and professional experience with environmental and infrastructure planning and design has given me the ability to understand the needs of a growing city and the skills to solve complex problems. Many years of service on city boards and with nonprofits demonstrate my deep commitment to issues such as equity and our community sustainability. With those organizations and others, I have been a leader in every setting. I want to bring that experience and my consensus building approach to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. And hello, Jen Catherine Peeler Truman. You're up next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Truman. I have lived in District D for over a decade. It is the place that I came to call home after growing up as an Air Force brat and living all over the country in North Carolina. I love this city and chose it for home. I'm a designer of experiences. I'm a designer of places. I work for an architecture firm and have a background in architecture and civil engineering that has given me the knowledge in how communities get built, how the things that we need in those communities get built, and how we come together to support diverse local businesses. Particularly, my volunteer and work experiences has let me get to know many of our restaurants and farms and farmers and our favorite spots in downtown and District D. And that work and volunteerism also led me to be on the Dix Park Master Plan work groups, to be on the AIA North Carolina board. That design thinking is something that we need to solve the complex issues we're facing at council today.
All right, thank you all for giving us a chance to get to know you a little bit better. Now let's dive into those questions, again, submitted by the public. 5 questions in all. We're going to start off discussing the COVID-19 pandemic. So question number 1 is in 2 parts. If the number of COVID cases starts to surge to an unacceptable degree, what additional measures, other than the ones already in place, would you support implementing to prevent and or reduce the potential community spread? Please explain why you would or would not support additional measures for your position. And we're going to start off with Carmen.
Right. If COVID continues to surge, if the numbers continue to surge, I believe we may need to go backwards a little bit more and have more or have less, more social distancing. I'm sorry, more social distancing in terms of not coming out as much as we were. Maybe having to close some places again that have been reopened. And I know that's not necessarily a popular idea, but I recognize that there are people who have who are disproportionately affected by this terrible disease. And I believe that we all have to do some things that we don't necessarily want to do in order to protect more people. There have been shutdowns at nursing homes and retirement care facilities. The hospitals are overstretched. Here in North Carolina, not as much as some other places, but I think we need to have discussions about what needs to be done to take care of our population. So wearing masks and perhaps just some more closing. I'm not sure that it's time for school to reopen. I don't know that that's our call, because that's a school board and gubernatorial decision. But I think we have to look at those kinds of things. And even with the knowledge that governing still has to go on, so we also have to find acceptable ways to communicate and increase trust with government as these issues continue to unfold. It's just hard decisions that will have to be made, and I look forward to having continued discussions with people around this question. Thank you so much.
We appreciate your response. Jen?
Hi. What should we do if COVID cases start surging at the city level? I think is a really important question because it has so many things that we can do at the city, and then so many things we have to do to take leadership and advocate on behalf of our citizens to the county and to the governor. But the mayor in Raleigh led with a mask mandate before the governor got there. And I think we can all say at this point that that was a really good idea. And so we need to think carefully about how we go about closing things again if we do see a surge, but we also need to recognize that it's really important to protect the health of all of our citizens. There are many people that never got to stay at home. My husband is an essential worker, and he didn't spend any time at home except for the 2 weeks when we thought that we might have had an exposure to COVID. We did not have it, which was good, and our family's blessed that way, but there are many families that aren't. There are families that have already had this and are recovered here locally. There are families that have experienced loss, and we need to take that into account as we think of cases rising and kind of look at this from the human angle. I think we'll need to see ourselves continue to be cautious and use masks and use social distancing. We've got reduced capacity at city facilities and parks right now, and maybe those capacities will have to be reduced again. Maybe we might have to close them again. But while we do that, we also have to make sure that we're supporting our small businesses. Right now, many of our small businesses are hurting. We've been able to give them some help and some grant money, but many of them need more. They need sidewalks opened up for seating. They need parking lots opened up for seating. They need the support like we gave them for curbside pickup at our restaurants. But our retail, our restaurants, all of our small local businesses need to have support. So if we do see COVID surges, obviously we want to follow the science and the advice of those in the healthcare arena and close back down and be cautious and careful and make sure that we be able to keep as many people safe as possible. But we have to balance that with keeping people at work or keeping people at work virtually or protecting their businesses from this long-term economic impact, because that can also cause hunger, that can also cause health problems. And we need to be sure that we're holding those small businesses and holding their hands and helping them through this trying time for all of us.
Thank you, Jen. Todd, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, thank you. And that's a great and very timely question. I think we're already seeing an increase in the numbers, and I know we're locally, and we're seeing an increase in hospitalizations. I know WakeMed is at or getting close to capacity. So we may be just about already there. And I'm frustrated, but I know we all are, but it looks like COVID is going to be here with us for quite some time. And so it's important that we figure out how to operate in that environment. I was pleased that mask requirements, social distance requirements were put in place here in Raleigh. It does look like we may need to step up enforcement of that. And I think if we can do a better job along those lines, we may be able to avoid sort of pulling back on the partial reopening. So I would want to sort of evaluate that first, talk with the public health professionals and the community to really understand what is the best sort of next steps, again, as we see these rising numbers. I come from a science background, and so when I in fact graduated from a school of public health, and so when I hear the public health professionals saying masks are effective and social distancing is effective, I believe them, and I think we would all do well to follow those guidelines and then see where that takes us in terms of the numbers. And those are some of my ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Jane.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think COVID is on the top of probably everyone's mind, certainly on mine every day. And with cases going up, it does beg the question, what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward and ensure the safety of our citizens? Like several others, I was really glad to see that Raleigh took a stand early on wearing masks. We know what is effective from other countries and places that have taken this seriously from the get-go. There are actually other countries that have hardly had to shut down because from the moment they knew about COVID, everyone wore a mask. Everyone thought, when they go out, they were going to protect one another. And so I really see in some ways that we have to renew our social contract to one another to understand that what I do affects my neighbor, what my neighbor does affects their neighbor. And so getting that word out and making it crystal clear, how can we stay safe? Many of these cases, they disproportionately affect certain groups of people. So essential workers, for example, the Latino community has had a huge number of cases compared to the percentage of that population in our city and in our state. So it's clear to me that not everyone is getting the same level of care or protection in this crisis. And I think that's where the city needs to step in and realize and take some action. Which communities maybe don't have masks? Which communities are their employers perhaps not taking this as seriously as it needs to be? And so just being crystal clear with everyone, these are the rules, this is what needs to happen, and it's so that we can take care of one another. And so really putting that in the forefront of people's minds. I think we understand how to take care of our families, and we need to see our city as a larger family in this endeavor. COVID has been especially troubling in terms of how our federal government has responded and how cities can respond in turn. In my experience, I find solutions are worked best through coalitions, finding consensus, working with the partners that have an impact. And so I would do my best to work with county partners, state partners, even the federal partners, as much as possible so that we can be safe across the board. People are traveling, people are taking vacations, and I think that's important for our well-being. Businesses, need to be open, but we need to be thoughtful and careful in all of our interactions with each other to keep that kind of economic activity and connection going.
Thank you, Jane. And finally, Stormy.
Thank you. I echo the sentiments of everyone who's participated on the panel so far. We certainly need to have, increased, utilization of masks and some other things. One of the other things I would say is I went Friday to get a COVID screening and COVID test, and it was a free testing site over in Garner. And I was talking to a few of the people who were working the site. They indicated that, folks had started lining up at 7:00 in the morning for the service that was going to begin at 10. And I was one of the ones that came on the tail end. I got there at around 2:30. They were supposed to end at 4, and I didn't end up leaving until right about, 6:00, just because it took so much time. So, one of the things I would want to do as a member of the city council is work with our folks over within the county Department of Health and Human Services, as well as the state Health and Human Services, and see how we can get more testing sites established throughout the city of Raleigh, because that's been one of the main concerns I've seen from folks, is that access to the testing, particularly for folks who can't pay $200 at a copayment with their doctor. And so, one of the things that, health officials are saying, it's important to have people tested so you can kind of contact, do some contact tracing, know who's, been exposed, who's been at risk. And that would be one of the things. Another thing I would do is urge the state officials to start a database with retailers and other places where they've had COVID outbreaks. One of the things right now, retailers are not obligated to report to the state when they've had employees or customers come into their facilities and they've tested positive. Now, I understand from a business standpoint, you want to keep the businesses open and keep people coming in and out. But I think one of the, the uncertainties in terms of why folks have not ventured out is that they don't necessarily know where people have been that have been exposed to COVID. And certainly if there's a way that we can kind of track and then provide some services as a city for those businesses where they've had people come in contact who've been, folks who've had COVID, then that may give, consumers more confidence in terms of places that they can go. Plus, if we're giving the businesses some assistance in terms of being able to get things sanitized, I think that would actually help the economy quite a great deal. But again, it would give our citizens more confidence in terms of where they could move around within the city. So those would be two of the things that I would want to do as a member of the city council. And again, as someone previously indicated, if we've got populations of folks that are having a hard time accessing masks, then certainly at the city, I think they did an actual giveaway yesterday. The Raleigh Police Department did a giveaway over at Roberts Park with masks. And so that would be certainly something that I would want to expand to make sure that all of our citizens had, access to proper personal protective equipment as they're moving around the city. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all for answering that first question. Now let's move on to three topics that were chief among the public individuals who submitted questions. And again, nearly 200 questions came in, but chief among them was economic development, affordable housing, as well as public transportation. So this Raleigh residents question is in three parts. Many candidates cite affordable housing, public transportation, and economic development as top priorities. What specific policy proposals would you support in each of these elements of the city's comprehensive plan? Todd, let's start with you.
Yes, thank you. Those are some really great topics and great questions and very timely. I think starting with affordable housing, we're in a housing crisis. Anyone who doesn't believe that is just not looking at the data or talking to residents in the community. I think we need both affordable housing and housing affordability, addressing all income levels that are in need. We need to look at programs that promote both ownership and putting a roof over people's heads. I think the bond is a great step forward. And I think we need to combine that with a variety of other tools, such as, and this sort of connects to the economic development question, such as the BRT, the bus rapid transit, and transit-oriented districts, the overlays, where council is currently looking at revising those to make it work better with BRT. That's an area where, BRT for me is an area where a lot of interconnected issues come together. So economic development, public transportation, getting cars off the street, providing access, but also the ability to address equity issues and other sustainability type issues. On the council, I also support is looking at some other zoning for affordability measures. I think the equity fund is a great idea, a zoning bonus. And I would support really putting all of those tools together to tackle that issue. And with regard to the 30 AMI topic, and that's a hot one out there, I fully support looking at better ways, both through the bond and with our partners, to address that issue. Again, we need to look at addressing both affordable housing and housing affordability. Let's see, 53 seconds. And then, I'll also just sort of comment on other sort of transit and traffic issues. Again, BRT is a big one. That's, I think, going to really transform our community in a lot of great ways if you do it right. Have good community engagement that's accessible, transparent, and inclusive. But we've got to combine that with commuter rail, more bike lanes, looking at first and last mile issues and working with our partners. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there to cover a lot of ground and address a lot of different issues. And, I think, I'm ready to help the council kind of work through all of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Jane.
Yeah, thank you. When it comes to economic development, I really tie it to community well-being. And to me, that kind of well-being is achieved by pursuing economic, environmental, and social prosperity. So thinking of those three things together Raleigh has been a place of growth. A lot of people have come here, an influx of really talented folks, and we have a homegrown pool of really talented folks. I want to see people be able to stay here, to have the cost of living that makes this a place they can call their homes forever. And so I think that goes really quickly to the affordable housing issue. I'm really thrilled to see this bond on the November ballot. This is an $80 million housing bond that, I'm really just so glad this city council has been bold enough to put forth. And, we have to think about those that are being rapidly priced out of the city. I want our retail workers, I want the people who work at the Food Lion down the street from me to be able to live near their jobs. I want our firefighters to live here. I want to see our daycare workers be able to afford, a home here, to have rent that they can afford. And I think our city staff ultimately need guidance from city council about the mix of affordable housing units that will come out of this bond. So if the $80 million bond is approved, there's still a lot of questions out there about what the mix will look like. So who will it support at what income level? The median income level in Raleigh is about $94,000. A lot of people are doing well. But then there's a lot of other people on the spectrum. Let's say if you look at 30% of that median income, that's under $30,000, $28,000 or less. That is actually what the Affordable Housing Committee for Raleigh has suggested should be the focus, or at least some significant portion of our affordable housing budget needs to go there. And so who makes that kind of money? Again, those are the folks that work in our retail environment as essential workers, our home health aides. And so I would really advocate a high consideration for that 30% median income level for how we use our affordable housing dollars. And I think in terms of transit, ultimately, keeping people here, allowing them to thrive in the city, obviously they have to be able to get around. I am committed to affordable and accessible public transportation and safe transit for pedestrians and bicyclists. I myself, pre-COVID times, I biked to work on the greenways, and I routinely feared for my life. I just have to say that there are spots around our city that are not safe, unfortunately, for those who rely on their own feet or bicycle to get where they're going. Most recently in Southwest Raleigh, there was a pedestrian fatality on Gorman Street. This was on the Walnut Creek Greenway, just crossing.
So Jane, I have to interrupt you.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So anyway, taking that into account.
But we appreciate your comments. Thank you. We're going to move on to Stormy.
Thank you. I echo some of the sentiments that Todd and Jane mentioned. One of the things I would say about the affordable housing bond, certainly we want to bring some transparency into that process. I agree that we need to figure out what we're going to do as it relates to low income housing as well as workforce housing, which would include our firefighters, law enforcement professionals, and teachers, and make sure those folks benefit from utilization of that bond. Certainly we've got some affordable housing spaces now that are rental units. Some of that money could be used towards getting those units out of disrepair and in a more livable state. We also probably have a mix of affordable housing rental units added, as well as figuring out how folks can get access to becoming homeowners, because we realize that's one of the ways that we generate wealth. One of the other things I would want to see with the affordable housing bond, which ties into economic development, is making sure that our women-owned and minority-owned businesses have an opportunity to participate as contractors as that bond is being implemented throughout the city of Raleigh. Certainly, we want to make sure that folks who are paying taxes have an opportunity to reap some of the benefits, and particularly some of our smaller minority-owned businesses would benefit from being able to have some contracts in that process. As it relates to transportation, one of the things I say, as I ride around, I see these, really large city buses, and they move around the city, and oftentimes they're practically empty. So one of the things I would want to do is work with staff and the different committees to see if there's a way to sort of streamline the public transportation process. is there a way we can bring smaller, buses onto the line and have more expanded routes, and then have those as like feeder systems to go into the larger buses that move around the city, so we don't have so many of our larger buses operating throughout the city empty and with fewer routes. One of the things, I had a conversation with a person who said, I would love to take public transportation, but one of the issues for me is I can get from point A to point B in my car in 20 minutes. If I'm using the bus system, it may take me 2 hours. And so, if we're going to encourage more ridership from the folks who have cars and want to encourage them to park their cars and use the public transportation system, one of the things we need to do is look at how do we make that more efficient and more accessible to folks so that they don't have as much of a wait time trying to get from place A to B. And real quickly, as it relates to economic development, I know the city has a office for minority and small business owners, or minority and women small business owners. One of the things I would like to see is more contracts with the city being given to folks who fit into those categories. I definitely think as we are utilizing more of our minority and our smaller businesses, it creates more of a workforce, and that's definitely going to build up more economic development throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stormy. Carmen.
So first, I want to talk about the affordable housing bond. I'm happy that that conversation has occurred and it's been placed on the ballot, but we still do not know exactly what is going in, what amounts of money are going in what portions of the affordable housing bond. The 30% AMI and less is the most important. We have people who are living in hotels now, whole families living in hotel rooms because there is not enough affordable housing, either houses or apartments in our city. And so that is an important piece of the bond issue that has not been dealt with. And so I look forward to continued conversations and that being straight before citizens are actually asked to vote on something. We need to know what we're voting on, and the council members need to know what they're voting on, not just a big pile of money. And of course, there are other ways to create affordable housing in our city without it just being apartments. And the bus system, the transportation system has got some issues. I have a child who rides the bus to work, and it does take her almost 2 hours to get from the Overland community to her job in North Raleigh. So, and with COVID, of course, not as many people can ride the bus because of the social distancing, having to be on the bus. So that is something else that we need to work on. In terms of economic development, we need to make sure not only that people have access to contracts, or we need to be sure that we are trying to help educate folks who need contracts. And we need that's a communication thing. And we have had communication issues even before we were in COVID. So we need to make sure that people are knowledgeable about what's available to them. And so it can't all be done on internet. It can't all be done. We're going to have to go out into the community and talk to people about what is available with our community, and not just make sure that folks who don't necessarily have needs are getting the money and the contracts for building things in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. And Jen.
Thanks. I'm glad to hear that we had a lot of questions on this topic. I think that the combination of solutions for these three issues is really what's critical for the next coming years as for what we're going to do with Raleigh as a council and as a community. These are issues that I'm passionate about. I've been advocating for ADUs for several years and speaking to council as an affordability solution in housing. And that's because I think that we need private solutions that increase supply as well as public subsidy. Affordable housing comes in many shapes and forms. And we can create a lot of affordable housing in the market by making it easier to build that missing middle gap housing that we have right now. And we need to pair that, though, as many people have mentioned already, with subsidized and bonuses in our zoning code for that subsidized housing inside the housing bond, so that those people who are at 30% AMI, or like my household at that 60% AMI, that we can still afford to own homes, that we can still afford to rent in Raleigh, because we get that help from our community. The types of grants that we need in order to continue with our elder grants for home improvements, continue with small business grants as well. So one of the things I want to tie together in this question is that we have a lot of plans around transit corridors, but that transit corridor planning is critical to be linked to the land use planning. It's critical that we build that affordable housing near the transit, that we incentivize developers to include affordable housing, whether that's in the form of cottage courts, whether that's in the form of bond subsidized housing. Those things need to be near the transit corridors, because that density makes our transit successful. That density makes our small businesses successful, because it provides the kind of place where we need mixed use. In District D, we have a wide range of places, from downtown with big towers and mixed use that's coming in, all the way out to South and West Raleigh and Southwest former CAC boundaries. There was no pharmacy. They need that small business, mixed use, small retail near their neighborhood in order to have what we're talking about, in order to have a transit-oriented development, in order to have walkability and safety within the neighborhood. To the point about walkability, that is critical to the health of our citizens. And we need to make sure that walkability gets us safely somewhere on the bus. I've been a bus rider for the entire time I've lived in Raleigh. I now have a car that works, luckily, after working many years to earn up the money for that. We've got buses that are packed, we've got buses that sometimes aren't packed, but what we really need to focus on is increasing that frequency in those right places along the corridor, where we also have the land use policies backing up the density on those transit corridors.
All right. Well, thank you, Jen, and everyone for your response to that question. And again, in addition to affordable housing, as well as economic development and public transportation, law enforcement reform was also chief among the questions that were submitted to the city. This next question is a combination of queries that were submitted regarding the subject of police reform. So the question is as follows. Are you in support of law enforcement reforms to include any or all of the following? Firstly, reprioritizing the City of Raleigh's budget to transfer funds from traditional policing to support community initiatives such as housing and mental health professionals to aid in responding to 911 calls when appropriate. Secondly, an oversight board with subpoena power that would be involved in disciplinary action. Thirdly, please explain why you would support or would not support police reform. We're going to start off with Jane.
Thank you. Police accountability and investment in community safety are top concerns right now for Raleigh and across the country. They're issues we have to tackle now. I'm really heartened by the council's decision to advocate for oversight powers for the newly created Police Advisory Board. I think that's a really smart move, a needed move. We have the opportunity to increase transparency between the police and the community, and we need to take that opportunity. We don't want to have excessive force or harassment in police culture. That's not something anybody wants to see in Raleigh. And so what I would advocate for is additional police training in de-escalation tactics, mental health issues, and racial bias. And when it comes to prioritizing budgets, what I would suggest is it possible to look at other models where they've actually taken some of their 911 calls and they have diverted them from the police to the social service providers that can really address the issue at hand. And I would suggest looking at models like Cahoots in Eugene, Oregon. This is actually a formal partnership between police and a community service organization, Whitebird Clinic. And what they do, the clinic, is providing a variety of health and social support services or connecting the people that call 911 with, those providers in the community. So they actually address about 20% of 911 calls. They fielded 24,000 calls in 2019, and they use unarmed crisis response teams. And they help people find support and feel safe where they live. I really want to explore unique and unorthodox approaches to improve police and community relations. So I think, we have a lot of, again, models to look at out there. We have to be able to sit down and have these thoughtful conversations and the will to make it happen. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the police accountability board have that subpoena power, have some disciplinary power, and to, improve that kind of accountability piece that we haven't had in the past in our police departments across the country.
Thank you. Stormy.
Thank you very much for the question. I spent some time working as a criminal defense attorney and had opportunity to engage with a lot of law enforcement officers. And one of the things I would say is if you look at the incident that happened in Wilmington a few weeks ago, where several officers were caught on tape basically saying some very inappropriate remarks as relates to some racial situations, fellow officers were the ones who reported that incident. One of the things I would want to do, if I'm fortunate enough to make it onto the council, would be to establish an ombudsman's program. I've worked as an ombudsman before. And if you establish a program such as that, that will create a mechanism for fellow members of the law enforcement community, law enforcement department, to have a way to go in and report incidences related to their colleagues in a safe manner and in a manner that they would feel protected to share that information and have that disseminated going forward without them necessarily fearing repercussions from their fellow coworkers. So that would be one of the things that I would want to do as a member of the council. As it relates to the subpoena powers and some other issues that folks have raised, certainly looking at different types of training, including diversity and inclusion, racial equity training, all those things would be great. We definitely want to see those things happen. As it relates to the oversight with the police board having subpoena power and disciplinary action, one of the things I would want to do is work with the city attorney's office, but also have conversations with the members of our Wake County delegation who are in the General Assembly. That would be something that those decisions would have to be made at the level of the General Assembly. And one of the things I think that would be important would be to bring those members of the Wake County delegation in to have a conversation with the council and the members of the police oversight board, as well as staff attorneys from the General Assembly, to basically indicate what could be passed as a law and to make sure we're not suggesting something that's going to actually be in conflict with other laws that are on the books, including laws that protect personnel actions. And so I definitely think it's something that we should explore and have more conversation about, but it's not one of those things that I want to say, yes, absolutely, this is what we're going to do, and that's going to be left to another body to make that determination, as opposed to the members of the city council. So I would certainly want to collaborate with members of the General Assembly, their staff, as well as the city attorney's office to find out what's a feasible path to go forward. And then I would advocate with my fellow members of the board in terms of finding a path that's an actual workable solution and something that could be achievable for the community, because we don't want to get people's hopes up and overpromise and underdeliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Stormy. Todd.
Yes, thank you for that question. I hope that we've arrived now at a time where we can have a greater reckoning with racial injustice. I think there's a great debt owed to African Americans. There have been periods in our history where we've made some good down payments on that. but we have a long way to go. I'm at a moment where I'm in a real listen and learn mode. As a white person, I think that's important. I think that, I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers with regard to policing or some of these, some of these other issues that are related. I would consider myself an ally. And I think my sort of, life experience has demonstrated some of that. Starting with my work back as a young undergraduate at UNC. I think it's worth though looking, or excuse me, with regard to policing. I think that again, as a part of that listening mode, I hear that from folks in the community that there is an issue of over policing, and so what I'd want to do is take a deep, sort of data-driven dive into that and see exactly what is the current approach in terms of policing and where we might be able to address some of these issues. And I'm not going to pretend to be someone who is an expert in law enforcement, but there may be some alternative strategies out there, such as focused deterrence, which is sometimes called pulling levers. That's been successful in some places. But also, our police right now are largely, the numbers and how they respond is driven by 911 calls. So in order to reduce armed response to 911 calls, we've got to figure out other ways to do that. So I think where it makes sense, we should look at a team approach where we have social workers, mental health professionals, homeless professionals, and so forth that, where it makes sense to either go with the police officer or in some cases an alternate. And I also am looking forward to seeing what the chief comes back with in terms of additional de-escalation. With regard to accountability and transparency, I fully support strengthening that. I support the city and their efforts to look at additional powers for the board. I think it's important to have more community engagement on that. I want to hear more. I want to understand more, and also look at where are the drawbacks there on the board with the board involvement, and if there are any alternatives. But I would absolutely want to work with everyone to help solve these tough issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Carmen.
Hi, thank you for the question. I believe that we need to do quite a bit of restructuring of our public safety system. I think we need to look in terms of inequity. I think we need to look in terms of the report that came out earlier this week that Black people are stopped in most of our state more than white people in terms of population. Just from personal experience, I've been stopped at my house because of where I live. I've been stopped driving. My husband has been stopped driving literally just because we're Black and we don't look like we're supposed to be where we are. And I have heard that it's communication issues, that the younger police don't necessarily know how to talk to people. So communication is one issue, but I believe that there are some reforms that are needed. And I agree that there needs to be community and conversation, and there needs to be a trust factor rebuilt with the public safety system. I don't think we can completely do away with it, as some people would like to see done. But I do believe that the Police Accountability Oversight Board, that is an important piece. But the subpoena powers and the punishment powers are also an important piece. And I understand that that is something that has to be done at the level of the General Assembly. But the City Council and the county commissioners and the school board, they all go to the General Assembly whenever they need to in order to ask for what they need. And so I don't think that this situation is something that would need to be any different. They go with an agenda every year. So I think that needs to be part of the agenda. I also believe that it is important that we partner with other organizations in the county, in terms of mental health, reprioritizing where some of the money from the police department is spent to bring in the kind of folks who can help with some of these situations so they can be de-escalated as opposed to escalating to tensions, to shootings, and to harmful actions. So I believe we have quite a bit of work to do in that, in the area of public safety. And that is not the only area, but yes, definitely that is something that needs to be done. And I would look forward to working to help that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Jen.
Thank you. Police reform and police accountability is something that may not fall into my professional expertise, coming from an architecture perspective, but it's something that I then turn to my community and to my compassionate kind of human side and point of view. So I think that it's important that we listen to the community on a couple of points. The community has been asking for several years that we create a police oversight board. We've done that. That we give it subpoena and disciplinary power. We've asked the General Assembly to do that. I think we need to continue to pursue that avenue so that we can do that. But we also need to give that new police advisory board plenty of work to do. They're an important board to holding the police accountable and to protecting the safety of all of our Black and brown neighbors and all of the people that might be targeted by the police. We need to give them a list of best practices from around the country. I've heard several mentioned from the other candidates here. We need to say that 8 Can't Wait is great, but we also need to move forward with the whole list of strategies that they're working on nationwide. And we need to do that in light of the fact that this is not just a national problem. This is a local Raleigh problem. Had several police shootings here in Raleigh over the past several years. When Akil Dinkins was killed on Bragg Street several years ago, I remember going down to Bragg Street the day afterwards because we had an urban agriculture event planned. And agriculture is about healing and food and health. And it felt like the exact opposite of that was happening in our city that day as everyone gathered on Bragg Street. And at the same time, I think that when the community listened for those moments to what had happened, the compassionate heart of Raleigh came out. And I think we need to continue forward with that compassionate heart, but give it a warrior stance. We need to be serious about how we're allocating our funds as a city. We need to think about how we can best assess those values for how we want everyone to be safe, how we want to be sure that the people who need help the most, who have mental health issues, who have at-risk backgrounds, are given the supportive services they need so the police don't have to be called, so their lives don't have to be responded to by an armed officer. We need unarmed civilians and mental health advocates and all of those programs that we're starting to see be talked about nationwide. We need to look at them seriously for Raleigh and advocate the amount of funding that would make them successful and be led by civilians while we work to improve the overall police culture.
Thank you, Jen. Now we're going to move on and chat about Raleigh's future. This was a question that came up with the questions that were submitted by the public as well. And the question goes, what is your vision for Raleigh's future in light of the projected economic shortfall? What are your priorities for Raleigh? So let's start off with Carmen.
Thank you for the question. So my vision of Raleigh's future is an equitable society, a society where we still have business growth, but that business growth is throughout the community. We have people who have jobs, that our homeless population is not growing like it is today. In light of economic downturn, I think we have to just work harder. We have to figure out some innovative strategies to help people, to help businesses in our community, and join together. We need to do things as a community, not pick out who our favorites are and make sure that they are doing the best. And one of the ways we do that is through community engagement. And so we have to make sure that there's a process where we can talk to each other. And that is my background, is bringing groups of people together to find out what it is that they say that they need and trying to make that happen. It's not a quick process. It's not an easy fix, but it's something that has to happen. I think that's my biggest priority, is that we make community engagement occur again. And that just takes several different ways. We have to build trust and accountability. We have to make sure that people have housing that they can live in, and that their plumbing and sewage situations are good. We have to remember that the history that we have in this city has been a progressive history. There have been things that have been done wrong, and there have been, we kind of forget where we come from sometimes, and so we need to be an inclusive city as well. And we need to make sure that our environmental, our transportation, our parks and recreation systems, our business and job training programs are structured so that everybody has equal access, and programs are available not just for adults, but also for our youth, because we have to train our youth as well to make sure that they are ready and have the mindset to build on the things that the adults have learned and are doing. And we have to make sure our budget process is open so that everybody understands it and knows what's going on. And so I thank you for that question.
Thank you for your response. Stormy, you're on the line.
I think my dogs are on the bandwidth. But no, as it relates to the city of Raleigh, one of the things I want to see is more equitable distribution of services throughout the city. For example, I had a conversation with someone in the district, and they were saying that the gym over at the Method Road facility does not have air conditioning. And, this is the year 2020, and we've got, gyms throughout the city and park and rec facilities throughout the city that don't have adequate air conditioning, but those facilities are used not this summer, but during the summer months as park and recreation summer camps. And so certainly if our youth are going to be accessing those facilities, and folks are, we want folks to go in and be able to, exercise and do different things, we want to have adequate facilities for everyone. Now, I know, one of the challenges we're going to be facing with the city is some shortfalls in income and revenue based on COVID, because, folks weren't out buying houses, they weren't out buying cars. A lot of things happened, so the tax revenue actually decreased. And so certainly we do have to look at what are the best uses for the funds that we're going to be having available for the city. We certainly touched on affordable housing. We've touched on transportation issues. And there are a number of other things that the city actually provides that we need to look into. The city used to be one of the biggest employers of our youth during the summer. But again, because of COVID, that's one of the things that's not going to transpire. The city's done a great job with giving our young people access to bus services. But one population that I think needs more access is our disability community. We've got folks who are disabled who need better access to transportation and things like that. So when I look at it across the board, I want us to be able to have more equity in terms of, everybody's paying taxes into the city. We want to make sure everybody's getting better utilization out of the city. Is there a way that we can come up with more projects to help, folks get a down payment for a house when they are, a single parent? There are a number of initiatives that we need to really think about as we move throughout the city. So, when I look at my vision for the city of Raleigh in, 5 or 10 years, I want people to feel like they are included in the process, and that they're getting a bang for their buck as they're paying taxes. They're able to get something out of it, and they can articulate what they're able to get out of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I'm really proud to call Raleigh my home. This is where I've decided to put down my roots after moving around quite a bit for education and to find my career. And if I was on city council, I want to make sure everyone is just as proud as I am of this place. To really thrive, for all of Raleigh to thrive, I have three things that I would be doing. First, fostering transparent community dialogue about budget priorities and trade-offs. Our district and the city at large, our residents, they need a robust, they should have a robust community engagement process. We need to have a voice in decisions that affect us. And it can't just be a few that get to be in that. I would initiate monthly community listening sessions in order to hear from the residents of District D on a regular basis. We really need a multiple, kind of array of avenues for this community conversation. One of my primary roles at NC State and with Sea Grant is extension or community outreach. And so what I do on the regular for work is I convene groups of stakeholders to talk about challenging and contentious issues in coastal development, so in coastal regions of our state. Before COVID, I would get people together, and nowadays it's in the Zoom online virtual world, but we also need in-person conversation. I am willing to talk to people outside safely, wearing masks. When I started this campaign, I went out to the parks. I went out to Lake Johnson, to the boathouse. I wore a mask. I gave out popsicles. I asked people, what do you want to see? What matters to you? Just these regular kinds of things. And I think a lot of people don't hear from their leaders in that regular way. We can also have, ongoing input, whether that's online or written, that's not in those kind of live or virtual spaces. And really, my top concerns or the things that I want to see us have in our future are community well-being. Great police relations, police accountability, affordable housing, many methods of safe transit and transportation, and then green space protection and flood prevention. I know I've got about a few seconds left, but I just want to be clear that we have a big flooding issue in South Raleigh. If you look at Walnut Creek and the way it flows east, I'll work on that issue.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for wrapping up on time. And Jen, would you like to weigh in?
Hi. My priorities, I've stated them on my website at jentruman.com, so you guys can read more about them, but are equitable and sustainable growth, taking a hard look at our budget and values, and walkability and transit. I want to say them all in case I run out of time. And given that we are looking at a budget shortfall, I've been thinking a lot over the last couple of weeks, even before I thought about putting in my application, about what are the smallest things that don't cost a lot of money that we can do to accomplish those things. And I think that a lot of these other applicants are correct, that it involves going to the community first. That's what I've been doing for the entire time I've been living in District D. So I remember when Thomas Crowder ran the Southwest Raleigh campaign, I was at NC State and got to work as an RA, going around and interviewing people and asking what they liked about Southwest Raleigh. As soon as I moved in, I found out where the CAC meeting was so that I could go. And I've been humbled to be able to go to the DDNA meetings that Kay was running every month whenever I could get childcare, because babies in public meetings don't always get along. But I also think that we have a long way to go on community engagement. We've set good examples with our major parks projects. So Dix Park had an outstanding community engagement process that kind of changed the shape of what planning looks like. The Southern Corridor study also did that. We're moving in the right direction. We need to keep going in that direction so that we can talk about equitable and sustainable issues that surround the growth, because our District D is going to see a lot of growth over the coming years. Even with this economic downturn that may be caused by COVID, the growth in the city has moved north for a long time, and it's coming south. And we're seeing changes, and those are great changes. They bring density, they bring transit, they bring opportunities for our businesses and things we wanted to see in our neighborhoods for a long time, like the Carolina Pines Avenue sidewalk project, like better crosswalks and things like that on Gorman Street, the Trailhead Bridge, things like that. Those are coming because we have growth now in our district. But we need to focus also on not just the big projects, but how we get to there. We need to think about crosswalks. We need to think about sidewalks. We need to think about signage. Those are things that are low budget. We can do a lot of that work of installing better paint on the ground for bike lanes and for crosswalks, so that people don't have to die when they're crossing the road anymore in our district, so that it doesn't take 2 years like it did on South Saunders for that stoplight to get fully installed to make it safe to cross at Carolina Pines. We have small changes that we can make like that. And also, I have to add that on the development side of things, it's hard as a small business to start a business and open a brick and mortar in Raleigh. And that's because of a couple of small things that could be changed in our zoning code. And they wouldn't impact negatively our environment or our neighborhoods. They would just make it easier for small businesses to get open and start going.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate your response. Todd.
Yes, thank you, Tamara. I want to work with the community and with the current council to navigate these current crises and then come out stronger, more just, more resilient, and more engaged. So I'm going to kind of break down some of those pieces there. Let's start with community engagement. As I mentioned earlier, and it's, I think we need to keep saying this over and over. We need community engagement that is accessible, transparent, and inclusive. Council is moving forward down a path to develop a new framework for community engagement. And through that, we need to get something that's really robust, really responsive to the community. That underlies just about all of these issues and everything we do. So that's going to be really important, and we need good community engagement to do that. And so I'm looking forward to either on the council or as a resident being part of that effort. I'll talk also about resiliency. We've been dealing with COVID and had a question about that earlier, so I don't want to repeat myself. I did want to add that one of the strategies on COVID needs to be filling those gaps that our other partners haven't been able to fill for workers, small business, and residents. But beyond that, we need to develop a resiliency plan. I call it Resilient Raleigh. This is a plan that we can start now, at where we can start sort of chronicling the lessons learned thus far, and then start preparing for the next pandemic. Now, we can combine that with other natural and man-made hazards like climate change to really prepare Raleigh for the future, and that's kind of part of what this question is about. The other thing I would address is equity. We talked a bit about affordable housing, and justice and policing, so I won't go back over those. But we need to look at infrastructure. Do we have equitable infrastructure in underserved communities? Are there some flooding issues that are due to sort of historical housing policy and so forth? And we need to look at reducing systematic bias in all of our city services and programs. Parks, I think we can do Chavis and Dix at the same time. I also am a strong proponent of responsible growth, one that addresses sort of the triple bottom line of the environment, the economy, and social equity. BRT, I talked about that earlier, but that's a really big project that's coming to Western Boulevard. It's a great opportunity to sort of address and combine all of those issues. And then I'll add, too, with respect to the environment, green stormwater infrastructure. I'd like to see that as the first choice for managing stormwater instead of the alternative. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Todd. Well, we've made it to the fifth question, our final question, which I think is a burning question on everyone's mind. We'll start off with Jane with this question. At this time, if appointed, do you intend to run for office? Please explain your decision, Jane.
I I assume running for city council again is the office. Yes, I would expect to if I were to get this position and feel like I was a good fit for it after the year and a half of service that it would require. I would expect that I would run and see what the residents of District D want at that time. It's unfortunate that District D residents don't get to have a voice in this in a regular way in terms of voting and picking their representative. I realize this is a special appointment election that, you know, by law, by the process that was on the books, this is how it is. And so I know some folks are disappointed that they don't get to put in their vote and say who they would like to choose. And so, you know, I would really, you know, if appointed here, I would be wanting to really stay in dialogue with everyone in Southwest Raleigh about what it is you want to see. I want to be a bridge. I want to be a voice for all residents. I don't have any special hidden agenda. If you asked me why one thing that I truly care about, it is community engagement and then equitably providing, you know, city resources. So yes, I would expect that I would run again and see at that time, you know, what is the will of the people, and it may or may not be me, it may or may not be whoever is appointed in this special election, and I look forward to having a really robust voter turnout. I hope to see more people in Southwest Raleigh, you know, recognize that, you know, who's on our city council, you know, it really does impact a lot of key decisions and the amenities and services that we all, you know, use and rely on here. So it's not just important to, you know, get out there and vote for president, but we also need to make sure that we are voting at this very local level. So I think I'll stop there.
All right, thank you, Jane. Stormy. I think Stormy may have been having some technical issues, so we'll float down the list here and then circle back with her. Jen.
I think this is a really good question. I know a lot of people have been asking this since before we even knew what this process was going to look like or who the applicants were. I'll start by saying a lot can happen in a year. I think 2020 has proven that. So whatever I say right now, please know that it will be thought about and considered, and your opinions as our community are welcome. I think I would consider, if I was appointed now, to run for re-election for a couple of reasons. One, I think that city council terms are rather short. You only spend 2 years in office. This appointment makes that even shorter. And there's a lot of work to do where consistency is important. There are a lot of long-term projects in our district. I've named a few of them. Dix Park is probably the most recognizable, but also the BRT corridors and some of the other smaller projects with our parks and the services that we as a city actually distribute needing improvement. So those kinds of projects need a level of commitment and a level of knowledge that you would acquire on the job. I don't have all of that knowledge yet as a community member, but if I was appointed, that would be on the job learning that would be really valuable in the next election. So I think that as I come at this from the perspective of providing the skills and the knowledge that I have to my community, that's what I see as the role of a city councilor, is to bring what I know and what I do well in terms of consensus building and solving complex problems and finding a critical path forward to the community in service of what they need. So I plan to keep my ear open. I plan to talk to everyone and hear them out. We may not always agree on the final decision, but the conversation that we have along the way will help us build that common ground and strengthen our unity as a community. And if I can do that successfully, if I'm chosen to fill the seat over the next year, then yes, I think I would want to run and have the public's permission to continue to do that. That's an important part of our democracy, to get that vote in.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate your response. Carmen.
Hi. So before I made the decision to offer myself for this vacancy, that was a decision that I had to make because the filing deadline will be near the end of the year, this year, for the next election. So I would not have put my name in the hat if I was not willing to run for election. And so I went ahead and decided that I would run for election, whether I'm appointed or not. So I'll go ahead and put that out there. I have made it my um, business, my mission, since I was a young child to be involved in change, to be an open voice, not just for myself, but the others around me. And so I have tried to live that out wherever I am, from elementary and middle school and high school to college to work to raising children and being involved with PTA. And I I love Raleigh. I know there are people who are here for a time and they leave, but I love Raleigh, and I don't really want to leave. And so I am going to be involved in this community um, until they take me out of my house, wherever my house is, in a box. And so that's what I have to offer. I am a bridge builder. I like to bring people together and come up um, with solutions to issues, to connect people, to make things happen. And I like to look for outside the box thinking, because I think that too often we think inside our place, we think inside our space, we think inside our heads, and that leaves that leaves the option of ideas that hadn't been thought about from coming to fruition. So yes, my answer is yes. Thank you so much.
Understood. I think we heard that. Yes. Todd.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. First, I just want to say that I'm really humbled to be here with all these other great candidates, and regardless of how this turns out, I look forward to connecting with all of them and all the other candidates that had put in an application, as well as the rest of District D, whether I'm selected or not. But if I am selected to fill this council seat, my first priority and focus is going to will be the best council I can be. And thoughts of running for a reelection are not going to be front of mind and something I'm going to be focused on in any kind of near-term way. But I think it is a fair question. Again, if I'm chosen from this group, I'll strongly weigh my options at that time about seeking a full term, but only after I've talked with lots of people in District D, and constituents, and discussing it with my family because it's a big commitment, those are the things I would do before I would make any final decision.
All right. Well, Todd, you have some time left on the clock. Your audio went out slightly. I don't know if you want to reiterate anything.
Okay. The main 2 points were that I would strongly weigh my options when that time came. I wanted to focus first on really being a good counselor and being responsive to the people of District D. But then I'd want to talk to constituents and discuss the matters with my family before I made any final decisions about running for election.
All right. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
And Stormy, last but not least.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
All right.
Yes, I would definitely would want to pursue running again for the seat who's ultimately selected for the position. It's an exciting time to be in Raleigh. We have about 64 people a day moving into Wake County. A large number of those folks are coming into Raleigh. We've got a number of major projects on the horizon, including the Dix Park project is right here in District D. But we've also got some challenges. Definitely looking at dealing with the situation between the community and law enforcement. Certainly having the affordable housing bond on the ballot, and looking forward to what the city is going to do with those particular initiatives. I would certainly want to have the opportunity to continue any work that I started as a member of the council. As others have suggested, I would certainly be talking to constituents within the district, which is something I've been spending a lot of time doing. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and I was not able to get to everybody within such a compressed time period. But that would certainly be something I would be looking forward to going on while serving on the council, which would be moving throughout the district and have an opportunity to continue conversations with some folks that I've already started. And, there are a lot of people that I know from high school and business leaders and other folks who are in District D that I would certainly be looking forward to, finding out what, some of their issues are, and working on the council to move a variety of things forward. So like Carmen, I definitely have an interest in serving the citizens of District D, and would certainly look forward to being on the ballot in 2021.
All right. Well, it sounds like everyone is prepared to be a leader for the long haul, which is good news. Now, let's switch gears to your closing comments. You can think of this as your 30-second elevator pitch, if you will. Some parting words for those folks who were willing to join us today. So we'll go in alphabetical order. Carmen, back to you. Your closing comments.
Again, I'm Carmen Coffin. I thank you for the opportunity to come before you and tell you how I feel about the city of Raleigh. In case you didn't hear my last spiel, I love it. And I would like to be the first Black city councilor in the city of Raleigh. I believe I can serve and help bring our community together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carmen. Stormy.
Yes, I appreciate everybody taking time to tune in this afternoon. I know there's a lot of interest in what happens with this seat. Again, I've been a very active member of the overall Raleigh community for a while, volunteered at a number of different festivals and served on a variety of boards. I would definitely look forward to having an opportunity to serve on the council as the first African-American female on the council, but certainly looking forward to working with the community and connecting them to the council to get a lot of things done and move the city of Raleigh forward. Thank you so much for your time. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their Sunday.
Thank you. Jane.
Yes, thanks, y'all, for giving me this opportunity. I really am grateful to have this experience, and I just want to reiterate, I build coalitions to get things done. I would love to work with you all on council and with the mayor to really create a thriving Raleigh for everyone. I like to build consensus. I like to listen. I like to look at complex, difficult problems, and I look forward to the opportunity of doing so.
Thank you. And then Todd.
Yes, thank you. And I want to thank everyone for this opportunity to talk about how to move Raleigh forward in District D. I believe the council needs someone who can step in and govern right away, has the best judgment and temperament for the job, one who is fluent in a wide range of issues, who will work well with staff and fellow councilors. I believe that I am the best suited to fill that role. I'm ready to work with everyone to address the current crises and come out stronger, more just, more engaged, and more resilient. Thank you.
Thank you. And wrapping us up is Jen.
Well, thank you to everyone listening in today. Raleigh politics isn't necessarily the most exciting, but it's definitely important. Thank you, Council, for giving us this opportunity. My priorities, again, are equitable, sustainable growth, focusing on budget and values, and walkability and transit. And that's because they're the priorities of our district. I know that because I've been in the district doing community work as a community leader ever since I moved here. And those are the things I've been advocating for. Those are the things I'll continue to advocate for on the seat or to the person that's sitting in the seat. So thank you guys for this opportunity.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our panelists today, and especially we want to thank our residents who submitted questions. If we didn't get to your question today, you have a lot of leaders here who I'm sure you'll be able to engage in the future, whether they're appointed to council or not. That said, what's next? That's the big question. So what's coming up next? The City Council will meet this Tuesday at 4 p.m. to continue this process. So I don't have a drum roll for you, but the suspense is there. And again, we just want to thank our esteemed panel of potential appointees, candidates for City Council District D. Thank you everyone for joining us, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.